If I asked you a year ago, the life that you were living, the life that we were living, is there lives that your life really changed a lot in the midstream? For most people, they'll say no. They were born. There are certain events of your life that you remember more than others. You may remember your bar mitzvah, your wedding, events that, where were you when Kennedy was assassinated, 9/11, Reagan was shot, Six-Day War in the land of Israel. So there's certain events in our life that we remember more than others, but our life basically was the same type of life, a little sunnier days, cloudier days. But everything changed now for most of us. How do we live the past, the present, and the future? As I mention every week, our Holy Torah gives us great messages how to live our life. Right at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, it talks about the famous story of Noach, who was living in a generation that was corrupt, and God said, time to wipe out this world. And he told Noach to build a teva, to build an ark, and go into the ark, and the flood came down and wiped out the whole world, except the only one who survived was Noach and his family and the animals that he brought onto the tent. And after the flood, Noach went out and rebuilt the life. Now it's very interesting that the first verse of this week's Torah portion says the name Noach 3 times. The rabbis who know that the Bible in general, the Torah in general, doesn't repeat things, and usually is written in shorthand, why in the same verse is written Noach's name 3 times? So the rabbis tell us because Noach lived 3 lives. He had the life before the flood, he had the life during the flood, and he had the life after the flood. What was the life before the flood? The life before the flood, so there's 3 Noachs, right? To survive in each of these 3 eras, you needed a completely different set of skills and resources. The first stage of Noach's life, everything was beautiful, calm, grew up with his family, he had a business, and that's the world where you work hard, you achieve success, there's routine, order, and comfort. The skills needed for this world are ambition, work, and consistency. But then Noach encounters a new reality, one that was reduced to the entire planet to an ocean, without a single survivor, not among humans or animals, birds or insects, or even trees or bushes. Just imagine what does this do to a person? Everything you knew is suddenly gone. In an instance, the skills required to cope and survive in such a world are a completely different nature. It's about survival and alertness. But then Noach was forced to reinvent himself a 3rd time, as he was summoned to leave the ark and rebuild the world, to get back to normal life. How do you do that after living on the edge in a world gone mad? How do you integrate back into a normal living after you face the abyss and watch your boat submerged in a titanic flood and your planet consumed in the waters? How do you return to civilization as a normal person? Now you need a new set of skills. The ability to recover after such devastation. The power to smile again. Not the innocent, idyllic smile of a youthful innocence, rather the joy that comes from conviction and resolve to still believe in the possibility of love and happiness. Indeed, Noach was far from simple. If you look at the Torah, what does it talk about after Noach went out of the ark, the teva? He got drunk and he behaved in an immoral way. So perhaps he had PTSD. A entire generation of Jews understood this exactly. It could be some of your parents and grandparents. They were living in Europe in a calm world, so to speak, even though there's a World War I, but in general, they were calm in Hungary, in Poland, and in Germany. And then Hitler, may God erase his name, the enemy of the world, took power. And the world that everyone was used to, calmness, success, Sunday at the beach, going to the park, having a job, was all ripped away from everyone. And then they went into the hell of hells that no one ever experienced before. And over there, they had to learn a new set of skills, survival. Like Rabbi Lau said, who was one of the youngest survivors in Buchenwald, he said, he came there when he was 6 years old. He said, although I didn't understand, but one thing I understood is how to be like a cockroach. A cockroach maybe doesn't have the intellect, has a little bit of brain, but a cockroach knows how to run and survive. So we learn the strength of survival. That's what we learn. Go explain to some of the group in America, world prosperity, they don't understand what the Jews had to go through during the Holocaust. And then they had to reinvent themselves a third time. Those who survived had to go into the world and rebuild their lives again. Rebuild again. They have to go from a creeping insect, trying to find a drop of water or a crumb of bread, without the SS God shooting you, into a dignified human being who has the freedom to live, breathe, and love. And this is what they had to do. This was not easy. And will one day be recorded as one of the greatest miracles in human history. For the most part, the survivors recreated a new world for themselves and all of us. A world of generosity, love, blessings, love, and value. And this is, in a far different way, this remains a challenge for many of us, even if, thank God, in a far more benign way. Many of us have our lives one period, and then tragedy strikes. And while we go through the tragedy, we need a new set of tools, a new set of ways to live. And then we go to a third stage of afterwards. We all have this. We begin in a civilized, settled world. We enjoy the innocence, calmness, stability, and security of youthfulness. We expect things to be gone a certain way, and then something happens and flips it all out. So if I gave this talk a year ago, we would all have to think about individual things that may have happened in our life, and some people they don't have. We don't have life-altering stories, which is great. But all of us have that right now. All of us have this challenge that everything is before the coronavirus. Life was calm, so to speak. We lived our life a certain way. And then all the tools that we used before, many of them we can't use now during the coronavirus. Many people lost family members. Many people lost their jobs. Many people are locked out at home. Many people have to raise their kids at home, special needs children, typical children, and Zoom. And now the kids go, it's only with masks. The things that we did at the basic in our life, going to vacations, going to restaurants, going to ball games, that's all gone. And if we do it, it's under fear and worry. So right now, in stage 2, it's a very different life. But then we pray very soon, we go to stage 3 of rebuilding after this period. And that's the key. Who can we get inspiration? So I read this amazing book, and I recommend, if you didn't read it, you should read it. It's called The Choice, from Edith Eger. Edith Eger is a Holocaust survivor. She's 92 years old, who in the book describes how her life was before the Holocaust. Beautiful it is. She was going to hopefully be in the Olympics. And then she describes in great detail going through the Holocaust and the atrocity she saw. And she was her and her sister were one of the very few survivors from her town. She had to dance. She was a dancer, and Mengele made her dance in front of him. Then he left. She survived the Holocaust, and now she, after coming out of that, she decided that even though she had a broken spirit, she said, now what? She made a choice. She decided to use her trauma to help heal others as well. She became a psychologist, and gets in the trenches with her patients and grants readers intimate access to her parallel quest to escape from the prison of her mind. And she just shared an amazing thing. And she shares, she talks about different people that she had to deal with in psychology. But she has a few great lines in the book. And she says, we have the capacity to hate and the capacity to love. Which one we reach for? It's up to us. She had Noach life number 1, she had Noach life number 2, and now she has Noach life number 3. And number 3, it's up to us. When you go to the bathroom in the morning, you can look in the mirror and say, it's going to be another crappy day. Or you're going to say, I'm going to honor myself, treasure myself, cherish myself, and I can make a difference today. Practicing love and kindness can be as simple as making eye contact when you go to the grocery store. And then she continues, suffering is universal. Victimhood is optional. We'll all inevitably face some kind of affliction, calamity, or abuse. Right now with the coronavirus, we're all facing it. We often have little or no control over these outside circumstances. But she says, victimhood comes from inside. We become victims not because of what happens to us, but when we choose to hold on to our victimization. We develop, she says, a victim's mind, thinking and actions that are rigid, blaming, pessimistic, stuck in the past, not forgiving. My dear friends, all of us could say we live 3 lives. We lived the life before, we live the life now, and we live the life of the future. In this week's Torah portion, God told Noah to go into the ark, but God also told Noah to go out of the ark and rebuild the world. My dear friends, if we're alive, if God gave us back our soul this morning, and God willing next morning, and the next morning, God is telling us, He expects us, believes in us, hopes in us, cheers for us, that we should all go out, and may be different than before, but we should all go out and rebuild the world, rebuild our life, make it a life that is always shining. And every moment we are a manifestation of the infinite light and love of divine. The clouds will pass and your sunlight and sunshine will emerge. And that's up to us. Let's make sure that phase number 3, the Noach number 3, is more beautiful and more holy and godly and more building than we had before. God bless you and Shabbat Shalom.